This is SciByte, episode 119 for February 11th, 2014. Hi, everyone, and welcome to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science podcast, live on a Tuesday and fresh on a Wednesday over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host, Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hey there, Chris.
Hey, Heather, happy science to you.
Happy science.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to take a look at treating a gunshot wound in 15 seconds, fatigue and light, a new Martian crater, the Olympic torch, curiosity news, and as always, take a peek back in history and up in the sky this week.
That is a broad range of topics, if I don't say so myself, and I'm pretty curious to see where we start, so let's do the news. All right, Heather, what is our first story?
So, when a soldier is shot on the battlefield or something else, and a medic, has to pack gauze directly under the wound cavity, there's not a lot of medical tech right there. And a new startup has veterans, scientists, engineers, and they're working on a better way to stop the bleeding right away. So what they have done is they've kind of had this modified syringe, which is more like a giant tube syringe, not like something you're going to take blood tests out of your arm. But it injects these specially coated sponges into a wound that's much faster and more efficient than gauze. And it's funny, they were saying that they originally kind of were inspired by Fix-A-Flat foam, for your repairing tires. So they actually had some early prototypes after the Army actually gave them $5 million to get a startup going and get a finished product. And so it's kind of this thing where you have to have something sterile, biocompatible, fast expanding, and they put these sponges. They're made of wood pulp and coated with blood clotting and antimicrobial substances.
Wood pulp, huh?
Yep. And so they put it in there and they hold it and it expands really fast. And in 15 seconds, it, can fill a wound, create enough pressure to actually stop bleeding. And so they can what they did is they had this compact syringe thing in order to kind of inject it into the injury. And
this is what kind of strikes me as interesting about this is I had a family member who was a veterinarian, and they use kind of a glue process for some animal wounds, and it kind of sounds a little bit similar like this. I didn't do this expanding aspect though. Is
I think
really
they actually did some. I think they actually said that they had a little animal testing, essentially when something came up and they were able to use it on some dogs or something, just in not purposefully hurting them, but. So they have this and it goes in there and it expands and it helps, create pressure against, blood vessels so they can actually stop the bleeding. And then they added little X-shaped markers so they're visible in X-rays. So then you can take an X-ray and make sure that you haven't left any behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have these applicators that they're able to use, and you can kind of they're single use. So you have 3 of these and they'll replace 5 gauzes of rolls in a med kit, on the field.
Oh, sure.
And so now they're designing actually smaller versions as well that could be for more narrow injuries. Now, right now, each one costs about $100. But as you get more manufacturing and things get larger, you get more manufacturing, larger numbers, then prices come down. But
well, and 2, I wonder if there's the other cost to consider is if putting this in a wound results in say some dramatic percentage increase in the recovery or reduction in infection or reduction in rehabilitation time. It seems like that's a whole other cost that they could factor for that would be an improvement.
Oh, yes. I mean, I was reading about, how they sort of on the field do it now, and I decided, nope, not going to talk about that on the show. It's not entirely pleasant.
Yeah, right.
Just so you know.
Right, I can imagine.
But this is much cleaner, much easier, seems actually better than pretty much everything they have now. So, I mean, they're hoping that eventually they can actually get some biodegradable ones that you don't have to pull out of the body. You can just leave it. And so they're actually going through and trying to get FDA approval. And the U.S. Army is already has a cover letter going, "Dear FDA, please expedite this approval."
Right. That might be why you're seeing some stories about it, to kind of get the word out about what kind of a cool thing it is. All right, Heather, any other thoughts on that one?
No, I'm hoping that this will go forward and possibly help save lives.
No kidding. All right, let's take a quick break right here. I want to just take a moment to set everyone set their weekend up for them. Not that I would ever presume to dictate your schedule, dear listener, but if you did have a little bit of time on a Sunday, you could visit jblive.tv and enjoy episode 300 of the Linux Action Show. We'll be celebrating, which is kind of crazy, and probably the best way to find out when that is go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Hopefully my cold will be gone and I won't be losing my voice by then like I am now. But I think we're gonna have a pretty fun event. We're gonna have a couple of announcements to make, and it'll be a great live show, because sometimes we have a lot of fun during the live stream that people don't get to see when they watch the recorded version. So this would be a good opportunity to just kind of come see what the live event is like too. I mean, why not? Why not celebrate 300 with us in person and join us in the chat room? If you go to jblive.tv, we have the live stream there and in the embedded IRC. But you can also go to irc.geekshed.net in your favorite IRC client and go into pound Jupiter Broadcasting. But it'll be on Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific, episode 300 of the Linux Action Show. And it's not yet, but it's 7.5 years old, I believe, as we hit episode 300. I might have my dates wrong a little bit, but that's a pretty remarkable number right there. There's a lot of TV shows that don't make it that long, like Star Trek.
Oh,
I know, it hurts, Heather. It hurts. So come celebrate with us. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get the time in your local time. But Heather, I'm all done with that. So why don't we do a little, news bite? Okay, Heather, what are we going to talk about in the news bite?
Alrighty. Last week we were talking about, the lights on your little phones keeping you up at night. Avoid that at night. Now they're actually saying, hey, if we actually use that, maybe we can make you more alert. So they're showing that researchers shown that exposure to short wavelength, which is blue light, during the day can actually improve alertness and overall performance. Now, they've previously shown that you can improve those things at night, but now they're kind of looking at it that you can also do it during the day.
So this is a flip on the conversation we had where the blue light from the smart screens can keep you awake, stimulate the brain in a sense, and how I mentioned I use that F-Lux program to adjust the color temperature of my monitors. This is sort of taking that and putting it on its head almost, and saying you could do the opposite at the other end of the day and have a different set of results.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole point was it's making you more awake when you don't want to be awake. Guess what? If it makes you more awake when you do want to be awake or more alert, so they're looking at it, it's like, hey, these people, participants were showing that they had, when they were around blue light, they were less sleepy, they were quicker reaction times, fewer attention relapses. So it's...
That all jives with my experience. After that episode, I've been doing my own little science, Heather. I every morning when I get in, even if it's not light out yet, I make sure that I open my blinds so that way it helps wake me up. I feel like when the sun comes up and I get a little bit of that blue light, I feel like it's like a compliment to my coffee. It doesn't do it on its own, but it helps sort of get me going in the beginning of the day by having that light come in here. And a couple of days I've forgotten to pull the blinds up, and I've been like, I was just sluggish this morning. Oh, I haven't opened my blinds yet. And I open them up, and about 5-10 minutes later, I'm feeling a little bit better.
Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, they're looking at like, hey, well, we could use this for, how can we use it to make lighting in places like schools or homes or workplaces where you can do that and you can be more productive in alert atmospheres.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I would also argue, towards the end of my contracting career, I think one of the reasons I wanted to start working from home a lot more was because I felt like I had better control over the lighting. And
Yeah.
this is a really interesting idea about bringing this to the workplace or schools. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in my office, there's a number of windows, and there's quite a few of us were like, bye-bye, fluorescent lights, like, open up all the windows we can. We're like, yay! Have as much of the natural light coming in as we can, and it definitely has a different feel.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on that?
No, just kind of using this to stay awake.
Yeah, and maybe people can incorporate into their daily routines and see if it helps them a little bit. Open up a window every now and then. All right, Heather, I'm going to bring in the band because it's time for the 2Byte News. All right, Heather, what are we talking about in the 2Byte News?
Alrighty. Mars has a new crater. Like, new.
Oh, how did this happen?
It's the Mars Reconnaissance.
Right?
The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has been, orbiting Mars, taking pictures, and it has a back catalog and a computer going through it and saying, hey, if something looks different, kick it to the people. Let people look at it.
Data.
So they're able to go and see these before and after images. It's from 2010, but it's just now where we're able to kind of see those images pop up.
Mm-hmm.
They saw like, hey, something is different in this time period. So then recently they're able to go back and take some good images of it, and it shows a crater almost 13 feet, almost 4 meters in diameter.
Wow.
So they have ideas about, it's not like the first crater that they've seen new. This is just a large one. They kind of guess that there are about 200 hits a year. They kind of see that from all these orbiting. Well, in that size range. This one, this one was actually 30 meters or 10 feet wide. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was really quite large, and it actually flung debris 15 kilometers, a little over 9 miles away. And so from that, they're able to kind of reverse engineer it and say, all right, well, we see all this debris, we see what kind of debris it is, then we're actually just able to say, hey, we can actually estimate by the size and by how far the debris was flown, how much power, how fast it came in, possibly what it was made of.
This might be a dumb question, and I should probably know better, but does Mars's thinner atmosphere than, say, relative to Earth's, does it make that planet more at risk of not burning objects up before they impact? Is that like a thing?
By at risk in the general sense that things are flying by it? No.
Well, no, but like in the sense
not
of
necessarily,
like
but yeah,
they don't burn up.
We see a lot of different little things burning up in the atmosphere. You go out, you see a shooting star. That's something in space that the atmosphere has burned up into a different little puff of nothing.
Yeah.
Mars, like you said, it has a very thin atmosphere. It's not able to do that so much. So yeah. There are more things hitting and larger things hitting the Martian surface because of that.
That is a really crazy looking impact. If you guys are listening, not watching, go check out the show notes. Actually, the picture is even embedded in the show notes. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, just kind of very excited.
Yeah. All right, Heather, we got a little update to do.
We do. So the Winter Olympics started this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember way back, last November, SciByte 109, we actually talking about how the Olympic torch was passed from one astronaut to the other outside the International Space Station.
Right.
First time it went out on a spacewalk. It's been in space before for other ceremonies. But this specific one was actually the first one to go on a spacewalk. Of course, it was not on fire because there's no fire in space, and you don't particularly want fire on the space station. But it was sort of symbolic passing on, and it came back down. And that torch was actually the one used to light the Olympic cauldron.
Oh, really? That's really cool.
There's different ones as they pass them on. But
during the actual opening ceremony.
During the actual opening ceremony where the person came up, they brought that torch back and had that one do the official lighting.
I guess also they had cosmonauts involved in the opening ceremony too, like quite a bit. It seems like they're pretty proud of their space program and the tradition they have there. That's that. You know what, Heather? I watched that opening ceremony, and I specifically remember talking about that story. It didn't even cross my mind if that was the one that went to space.
It
So
hadn't crossed my mind either. I didn't realize it until after. I was like, oh, why did I miss it?
yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that because it kind of it adds a little extra bit of behind the scenes info. It's surprising they don't make a bigger deal about that on TV or something like
I was surprised as well.
Matt Lauer was running his mouth. He could have at least mentioned that. All right, Heather. Well, we were just talking about a little impact over at Mars, so why don't we do a curiosity update? What do you think?
Let's go.
And liftoff of the Atlas V with Curiosity.
Touchdown confirmed. Receive on Mars.
All right, Heather, how's the little rover doing? Well, not so little.
Yeah, not so little, but there is a lot going on that it's happening going on. In the last couple of weeks, we've been talking how Curiosity has been kind of eyeing this little sand dune to be able to decide whether it's going to go over it.
Right.
And it's actually because of the wheels. And I have an image in the show notes, and you have to check it out. When I say that the wheels are getting beat up, I did not realize how beat up they were. There are like pot marks. Like it looks like
really
if you've ever been in a hailstorm, it looks like the hail is just bashed it in. And there's actually a hole in one of the wheels where it's kind of ripped the hole just a little bit.
Oh, man.
So it's been quite beat up. So there's definitely reasons why they're trying to avoid as much rocks as they can.
Now, isn't that interesting that... wow, I mean, the other rovers haven't had this kind of a problem.
Well, do you remember the other rovers were in
lighter,
yeah,
too.
Much lighter, much less.
Yeah. Interesting.
Rockiness.
Yeah, because it's not metal, is it? Because it'd be too heavy to be metal, right?
Aluminum.
Ah, aluminum. Okay.
So yeah, you want light but quasi sturdy. But so yeah, this is a big guy, and they're actually going over a much rockier surface than actually I had expected. But so they kind of decided, we're going to be changing how they drive and where they drive. And so in order to get to a smoother place to get to the next the drilling zone, there was a sand dune in between them and that. And of course, sand dunes and rovers on Mars, kind of scary. Because poor little Spirit was lost in a sand dune. Opportunity almost got eaten by a sand dune. Luckily, they were able to recover him. So for Curiosity, they were very kind of leery, deciding how they were going to do this. They had their camera out. They looked on this side and that side. They'd actually driven up and kind of gone up just a little bit and then backed off. So they kind of were able to look at the sand dune and how the wheel had kind of gone into it and out of it to kind of get an idea. And they actually did. They're able to cross the little sand dune completely safely and happily. No difficulties going on through that. So now took their shortcut and they're on their way to a smoother ride.
Well, that's good. So, wow, Heather, I'm really glad you grabbed that picture of the wheel. You guys got to go to the show notes and check that out. That really is a lot worse than I was picturing.
Oh, me too. Like I saw it's in one of the stories, and at the very bottom, I just happened to scroll down all the way, and I'm like, oh wow, definitely have to point that out to everyone because it really does look like a hailstorm has knocked this poor little wheel to death.
Yeah,
and the rip also I was very surprised about that.
So, I've been seeing this picture float around the web this week of the Earth and the Moon. Was that taken by the Curiosity rover? What's the story there?
Yes, it was. We've had other Earth images from other things on Mars, and even last year we had it from Saturn. But this is the first one that little Curiosity has made, and this one it shows Earth shining. It's pretty much the brightest thing in the Martian sky, at that time. And the images were taken on January 31st of this year. About 80 minutes after Martian sunset, they used the high-resolution cameras on the mast to collect a series of these images. And so, 99 million miles, 160 million kilometers away, they took a selfie of Earth.
Yeah. We're just on that tiny little dot right there.
Yep, and you could actually see the moon too. And I mean, if you were standing there next to the rover, you could have seen it. You would have seen Earth and the moon, two distinct, different little stars. So if you're standing there next to Curiosity, because I don't know, I think it'd be pretty cool to standing there next to the little rover. But
it really puts it in context when you look at not the zoomed version, but just the little dot in the sky.
yes.
Oh, that's a whole lot of deep right there, Heather. That's a whole lot of deep. All right, any other thoughts on that?
Not just always love more and more about Curiosity.
Speaking of deep, why don't we jump in the time machine and head back? Whoa!
Yep.
Sorry about the rattle. Yeah, Belly was in here playing earlier. It's literally a rattle. All right, Heather. Well, the time machine just brings us to a real quick destination.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that rattle, there would have been no rattles at all. February 15th, 2013, a year ago, Heather. What happened this week in science?
The Chelyabinsk meteor
Whoa.
over Russia 1 year ago. Chelyabinsk. That was the
dash cam meteor.
Yeah, that was the dash cam meteor that soared through the sky. And it was pretty big. And they actually were able to recover it last fall and able to see, how big it was from the bottom of that ocean, from the bottom of that lake.
Yeah, it was a lake, yeah.
Yes,
wow, I remember this. This is a great callback. Can't believe it's been a year.
I couldn't either. That's why I was like, it was only a year, but still.
It feels like I can't believe it was just a year ago, and at the same time it feels like, wow, that was only a year ago. I'm mixed on it because so much has happened in that year.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But seeing that again, I was like, oh yes. It was a very big deal at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember talking a lot about it and how as all the data started trickling in about what happened.
We never get a good show like that. I hope when something happens like that, we'll have at least a few cameras. Of course, here what happens is everybody's going to have smartphones. In Russia, I'm sure they have smartphones too, but everybody's got dash cams. Here, everybody will get shots with their phones when it happens.
Yep. I was watching some science fiction show and one of the protagonists is like, yep, the Earth is going to come to an end and everyone's going to be pointing their smartphone at it.
Very true. Very true. All right, Heather, well, let me recalibrate the SciByte 2000 so that way we can look up into the sky this week.
Alrighty, this week on Friday, February the 14th, Valentine's Day, you get the full moon exactly a little before 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If you look to the left of the moon, you might be able to see the star Regulus, and that if you're in the dark enough skies, you might be able to see a backwards question mark to the left of the moon, and that is actually part of the constellation Leo. And Regulus would be the brightest part of it, being the period at the bottom. On the whole this week, we've got Venus, the morning star, at dawn, looking to the southeast. Mars is rising about 10 to 11 p.m. You'll see Spica about 5 degrees to its left. They're about the highest point in the sky, about 3 or 4 a.m. And then Spica moves to the lower right. Remember, 5 degrees is your 3 middle fingers held at arm's length. Those two are always nice because you got the orangish red Mars and the very blue Spica. Jupiter this week is in the early evenings. It's rising in the eastern sky, crossing overhead about 9 p.m. and setting in the west just before dawn. Saturn is rising about 1 a.m. in the east to southeast, moving to its highest point in the south at dawn.
Wow. Is that it? Yep. Is that the whole sky?
Yep, and so we got dawn over there in the southeast. You have Venus. Over in the west, you've got Jupiter. And kind of at the south, you've got Saturn. So a lot going on in the dawn this week.
Yeah, and you got that romantic moon on Friday, Valentine's Day, which is perfect. It's like the moon knew, and it's helping everybody out a little bit.
There you go.
All right, Heather, anything else we want to cover this week?
Not that I can think of.
Well, then I'd just like to leave with this. We'd like to hear from you. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click that contact link, and then just choose SciByte from the drop-down. Or even better, join us live over at jblive.tv on a Tuesday. Get the exact time over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Heather, thanks for the great show.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of SciByte. We'd love to see you right back here for 120 next week.